Hey, good morning, Laguna Woods. I'm so glad that you are here. This is Inspiration for Today.
Yeah.
This is a very special show because we have our senior pastor, Pastor Rick Warren.
Hey,
I'm so
Rick.
glad you're here.
All right. So today, inspiration for today is the Rick and Rick show.
It is.
All right,
It
it's the
is.
Rick and Rick show. It's a
And
1-2 punch.
And I'm a little bit older than you.
Yeah.
So
Not much.
So I
Not
often
much.
say I'm the original.
That's it. Good.
Anyway,
Good.
Rick, one of the things that I've noticed over the years
Yeah.
is that when you sign a book,
Yeah.
and maybe other things too,
Yeah.
but certainly the books you've signed for me,
Yeah.
you always reference this verse. And we always have a verse for the day
Yeah.
on Inspiration for Today.
Okay.
Here's the verse Rick always signs. It says, "Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails."
Yeah.
Why do you do that?
Well, I think that verse contrasts the difference between our plans and God's purposes. And our plans, when we're planning, even the best plans, we all know this, we're often wrong.
Yes.
How many times have we made plans and it didn't happen the way we planned it? But God's plans, God's purposes always happen. And so the more I can switch from my plans to God's purposes, the more likely I'm going to have fewer mistakes, fewer roadblocks, fewer delays, dead ends, and things like that. So the verse really just means that God's purposes are going to last forever. And if I live what I call a purpose-driven life, then I'm going to be building my life on something that's not temporary.
Yes.
I'm going to build my life on something that lasts. By the way, I want to say something to the folks of Laguna Woods, because people don't know this. Saddleback Church started in Laguna Woods.
But it was called something else at
No,
the time.
it was called Saddleback Church, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
When I moved
Well,
here.
no, I know that.
When I moved here, it was called Leisure World in the original days, of course. But when I moved here, Kay and I moved here in January 1, 1980. Okay,
That is crazy.
we were 25 years old. I had a 4-month-old baby. Leisure World was fully developed. None of the other cities, Mission Viejo, Aliso Viejo wasn't here, Rancho Santa Margarita wasn't here, Lake Forest wasn't here, there was an El Toro, but there were all these other cities weren't even here, but what is now, of course, Laguna Woods was here. And I remember pulling off at El Toro Road, and the first thing I saw on 3 of the 4 corners were big banks.
Huh.
And I thought, now that's interesting. I've never gone to a city where the first thing you see are 3 banks.
Yes.
So I thought that was interesting. But our first house, we found a realtor, and I walked in at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I said, I need a place to live. I said, I'm Rick Warren. I'm 25 years old. I've never started a church. I've never been a pastor. I have no members, no money, no building, and I need a place to live. One realtor, and his name was Don Dale, in the room. He says, well, let's see what we can do. Well, he took me to an apartment over actually in Leisure World. There's one little section over off of Via Iglesia where there's a little section of apartments that's actually encircled completely by Laguna Woods. Yeah. And he got us the first month rent free and nothing down. And so we started the church in that apartment with 7 people. So Saddleback actually started in Laguna Woods.
Isn't that awesome? Yeah. And now we find ourselves back in there.
Oh, yeah. We had to go back.
In this clubhouse.
Absolutely.
And you were just there recently, which was awesome.
Yep.
But, when you wrote, I wanted, if we could switch a little bit, to talk about, because you, by your own story, were from a small town in Northern California.
Yes, I was.
What was the town, actually?
Well, there's a little town called Redwood Valley, not Redwood City. Redwood City's in the Silicon Valley. Redwood Valley's 2 hours north of San Francisco. It's up in the Redwoods.
Okay.
And it's actually famous for 2 things. One, it's the place where the Jim Jones cult got started. My next door neighbors actually died in Guyana. They moved. It was a couple, a family. The kids that I grew up with died in that when they moved to town, they were the biggest thing in town. And the other thing is, I'm from there. and it was a little town of 500 people. And so I kind of had a Huck Finn growing up.
But you so you would have never imagined that these books, because when you wrote, first of all, Purpose Driven Church, Rick, is a book that so influenced my ministry from day one that I got into it. Yeah. And then, of course, Purpose Driven Life came along, and
It's the best-selling book in American history. Yeah,
that is amazing.
It's the best-selling book, hardback, in American history. It has 2 Guinness records. The other one is it's the most translated book in the world, except for the Bible.
Except for the Bible,
It's in 137 languages. So nobody could have ever figured that. I certainly didn't.
You remember, Rick, that do you know what this is?
I'm looking here. You've got an original copy here, the
loose
leaf copy.
I do, because in 1980...
That's pretty rare. You could sell that on eBay.
It's funny you say that. So back in the day, before it had been published, you gave the staff
I gave
one
about,
of these.
Not everybody on staff. I gave about 50 people that I hand-selected. I gave a copy of Purpose-Driven Life. I said, I would like for you to read through this.
You're making me feel good.
Well, you're one of the 50. And I said, I want you to read through it and tell me what changes you would make.
So this was the loose leaf.
Right.
I call it rough draft in a way.
Exactly. It was.
To Purpose-Driven Life.
I was talking about eBay. The other day, a guy called me and said, Pastor Rick, I saw one of your books, Purpose-Driven Life, signed on eBay for sale for $90. So I called my son Josh. I said, I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing.
But I had to think this through that, because when you gave us, you made a joke at the time. You said, I'm giving you this, but I do not want to see it on eBay.
Yeah, right, exactly.
That was exactly your instruction.
Well, it's funny because the book is, of course, gone all around the world. We had a peace team from Saddleback a year or so ago, came back from Myanmar, which is Burma, okay? And they were at the top of the Himalayas, and they said 2 interesting things. One, up top of the hill, there was a little kid wearing nothing but a Saddleback T-shirt. A Saddleback kid's T-shirt. How it got to the top of the Himalayas, I have no idea. But a little kid walking around with just a T-shirt on, almost like a dress. And he goes, that was one thing. He said, the other thing is, Rick, he said, your book is everywhere in Burma, in Myanmar. He said, it's photocopied, and it's by Ricky Warren. Right? And I said, well, actually, that's a good thing, because bootleg material means it's good.
Yes.
Nobody copies junk. So if it's being copied illegally, it just means it's helping somebody. So
that reminds me of the time that you've related, though, where you said you were like in South Africa, I think it was, and you got off and you're in some village, and some villager says, you're Rick Warren.
Yeah, that's right. And I've never seen.
You said, how did you know that?
Well, that is funny. That guy I had done a conference in Africa where we had broadcast to about 80,000 people listening to this conference, 400 sites across Africa. And after it was over, it was from Johannesburg, I said, put me in a Jeep and let's go out to the bush. I want to just see a typical church out in the villages. So we drove out to the middle of nowhere, to a village with no water, no electricity, and it was just a tent. And it was a little church meeting in a tent, 50 adults and 25 kids orphaned by AIDS. And I thought, this church is doing more to help the poor than we are. We've got to do more to help the poor. Because they were growing a garden to teach these kids. They had lost their moms and dads. The kids were being schooled. They had a few school books. The kids were actually sleeping in the tent. And I remember I got out, and the young pastor was in his 20s, came around and goes, I know who you are. You're Pastor Rick. I said, how do you know me? Because a lot of people maybe have heard my name, but I'm not on TV, so they don't know what I look like. So I go, so how do you know me? He goes, I get your sermons, your free sermons every week. I said, how do you do that? You don't have any water or electricity in this village. He said, well, they're putting the internet for free in every post office in South Africa. They're called PITs, Public Information Terminals. So he said, once a week, I walk an hour and a half to the nearest post office, download your free sermon from Saddleback, walk an hour and a half back and teach it to my people. He said, you know, Pastor Rick, you're the only training I've ever had. And I thought, I'm going to give the rest of my life to guys like that. And that's why when our church, for instance, in Laguna Woods, in our offerings, we're going to support people like that all around the world.
Rick, we got to end for today. I'm so glad you're coming back tomorrow.
I'll come back.
See you tomorrow.
God bless you.
Bye, Laguna Woods.